car crash cases, defective products, dangerous drugs, injuries, and abuse. Across the state of Alabama, the attorneys, proudly sponsored by the law firm of Hollis Wright, are here to serve you. Your tough legal questions answered by our experts. The attorneys with Josh Wright from the law firm of Hollis Wright and host David Lamb.
Good evening and welcome into the attorneys. Thank you so much for joining us and making us a part of your Sunday evening. We've done this for a few years now. One of the reasons that we really like to do this and that the firm of Hollis Wright offers this is an opportunity for an educational and informational conversation about legal matters and legal matters that we believe are pertinent to you and your lives. And tonight's show, we believe, falls right in line with that. Leading our conversation from the firm of Hollis Wright is Josh Wright, managing partner. Good to see you, sir.
Good to see you. It's actually, whenever you say we've done this for a few years, kind of tongue-in-cheek, it's funny to think that this show has gone almost 6 years.
Time is flying.
It really has.
We've covered a lot of ground.
Oh my goodness!
Sure.
Imagine the number of legal topics we've covered.
Yeah.
We need to get that list together and we'll run through it one time. That may take an entire show by itself.
Yeah. But our conversation tonight, something that seems to be increasing in popularity, I guess.
You know, we do a lot of shows, David, on the issue of family law related issues and divorce and child custody and those types of things. And then we have put a different spin on some of the family law related issues in one of the specialties in family law, which is adoption, how that process works, how parental rights can be terminated, those types of things, to allow other family kind of in related circumstances to adopt. And adoption's become real popular. So when we do that, of course, it's not within the sweet spot of what we do. So we bring the experts on, and we've got Jennifer Tombrello on today, who does this type of work with Tombrello Law Firm. And this is really, first of all, welcome. We're excited to have you on the show. But this is really a specialty. Like, you don't go to law school and say, I'm going to be a lawyer and I'm going to handle these 50 topics. This is an issue that once you graduate from law school and finish law school on the bar, that you really work your way into and kind of have a passion for, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's a very specialized area of practice of law, and you really have to know what you're doing.
How did that happen for you? Because this really is a unique, interesting area of the law.
It is. You know, I started out doing adoptions, helping some friends who had taken in some step siblings. And so it was 4 adoptions at one time, and so I was able to run through all of them, learn all the mistakes, all the ins and outs, and take it from there.
So let me ask you this. Now, when we talk in terms of adoptions, we have a lot of different forms of adoption, don't we?
Correct.
Like we've got, we did some of the pre-production workup, and there's related adoptions and unrelated adoptions and those types of things. But in general terms, this topic of adoption, is it always involving a minor? And a minor is being adopted by some third party or by some family member? Is that generally the way this works?
You do not have to be a minor to be adopted. An adult, a legal adult, can be adopted. However, you cannot have a related adoption involving a minor. And a related adoption is within 1 degree. You have grandmother, grandfather, aunts and uncles, also siblings, half siblings. Those are all, and step-parent adoptions, of course.
So how would that work? Give us examples, and I think I can think of them, but give us examples of where a grandparent, for example, or an aunt or uncle in a related adoption would adopt. Is it because the mother and father may be, they may have individual problems, they may have criminal history? I mean, how does this generally come in your practice? How do you see it?
That's correct. There could either already be a petition for a termination of parental rights out there. A lot of times the natural parent has become deceased, and the grandparents then step in to raise the child as their own.
All right, so we do get this question a lot, and this is kind of an interesting issue. It's amazing how many times we get this question, and it is this. I don't have a will, and if I die in an accident, whether it's a car accident, a plane accident, cancer, whatever, but I don't have a will, something happens more sudden, is my child just going to be a ward of the state? Or, you know, is the interest of the child to go to a family member? That's a question we get a lot.
Absolutely.
How do you answer that generally?
Well, in terms of adoption, once a child is adopted, in the eyes of the law, they are legally that parent's child. So they would inherit from that parent, and their former natural parent, which was terminated at the adoption, they cannot inherit from.
So if somebody passes away suddenly and they don't have a will, it is the interest of the child to get that child to a family member? Like, does the state have ways to try and protect that child to make sure that they're staying inside the family, staying with siblings, those types of things?
Absolutely. The Department of Human Resources can always step in, and they usually find the nearest family member who is willing to take on the child.
So one of the issues there, and that was kind of what I was driving at, and Jennifer did a great job of answering that, is just because you don't have a will does not necessarily mean your children are going to be wards of the state and taken away from siblings, etc., if something happens suddenly. We do recommend a will. I think that's a super important component of kind of this family organization and how we handle issues related to where children will go at the time of death, where resources and assets go at the time of death, those types of things. But there is a process that can be used to make sure that the child stays with a related family member if something goes wrong suddenly.
You know, as I think of folks I know who have adopted, they kind of seem to be on a different spectrum. One is a family member, something has happened to the parent, and then a family member takes it in, either a grandparent, aunt, uncle. So that scenario, or they're going to China or somewhere and adopting a child from there. Is there a great difference in terms of complexities and difficulty in those two options, or is it kind of the same? You got the process the same regardless of whether it's someone in your own hometown or someone across the ocean?
No, it is absolutely different, a very different process, and that is what is considered unrelated and related adoptions. So an unrelated adoption would be an adoption from another country or from an agency, an adoption placing agency, or even from DHR that's just not related to you. In that case, you will have to have DHR involved. They will have to come and do a home study, and there are several other steps that must be taken that are not taken in related adoptions when it's a family member or a step-parent adopting. Okay. There's also a 1-year requirement that the child must reside with the adoptee.
Right.
Can
I ask just a real quick follow-up to that, because especially those where they're not family members, unrelated adoptions, there is a concern, rumor, myth, I don't know if it's true or not, that for those, you have to have some funds behind you. Is that true or false? Is that a myth, a fact or fiction, that if you want to adopt from abroad, you need to have some finances to make that happen?
That is fact.
Is it?
There is, a lot of times the adoption placing agencies cost a fee, and then once you bring the child into the country, you still have to adopt under the state of Alabama laws.
I know we're getting ready to go to break. When we come back, I do want to ask about this, though. I want to ask about when you do those unrelated adoptions overseas, etc., what rights do the birth parents have later to try and come and attack that adoption process? Yeah. I think I know the answer, and I think those parents are safe that did the adoption, but I want to talk through that because I think that's important.
My wife Sonia has made me watch Lifetime movies where that story exactly is played out.
That's right.
I've seen it before. We'll talk about that when we come back as we step aside. A couple of reminders. Attorneys from Hollis Wright standing by right now to speak with you about this topic or any legal topic that matters to you, a question you have. Real attorneys, honest to goodness, they're standing by live right now. If you call that number, you'll be able to speak with an attorney from Hollis Wright right now. Take advantage of that. Stay tuned. More of the attorneys coming right up. I'm Josh Wright with the law firm of Hollis Wright, a personal injury law firm. Thank you for watching The Attorneys. Now, we hope you, a friend, or a loved one never needs legal counsel for a case. But if you do, the goal of the show is simple. Provide answers and legal counsel when you need it the most. Your call to the show is free, so if you have questions specific to the show or related to other accident or injury-related topics, you can call, email, or text us. Or you can also follow us on Facebook or Twitter, or simply contact us by going to hollis-wright.com and click on the Contact Us link. We know your time is valuable, so thank you for spending it with us watching The Attorneys. Welcome back into the attorneys. So many lives have been touched and changed through adoption. Talking all about that tonight. Would love to have you join the conversation. You see there at the bottom of the screen the way you can join our conversation right now. Josh.
All right, so we talked before the break, Jennifer, about the birth parent rights in an unrelated adoption, for example, an overseas adoption or even a domestic adoption. What birth rights do the birth parents, do they still have to be able to come back later once adoption is legalized through a court order or something else? Do they have rights to come back?
Well, once an adoption is finalized, the record is sealed and closed, and it is very hard to get into that record. However, it can be reopened upon motion of any of the parties involved, any interested party, and it can be reopened and looked at for procedural issues. So an adoption can actually be overturned once it's been finalized. 15 years later, if they come back and find that there was not proper service, there can be a motion filed and there will be an evidentiary hearing held by the probate judge to determine whether or not there was proper notice and the adoption was handled properly.
Well, and you raise an interesting issue, and that's this. Do parents have to consent under all circumstances to an adoption?
They either have to consent by signing a waiver and agreeing, or the court can make that decision and terminate their parental rights, either with or without their consent.
All right, so let's take a case study, because I know you get these all the time. Case study is we have a younger mother and father who are not prepared to have children yet, want to put a child up for adoption with an unrelated individual, so not a family member, and they want it to be confidential long term. Can they maintain that confidentiality? Is it state-based? How does that work?
They absolutely can. It is 100% up to the birth parents who are giving up that right, how they want their child to know their information. They can either leave just a name and address, they can leave health and personal identifying information if they don't want them to find them, or they can, leave their full information and say, if the child comes looking for me, let them find me.
Now, you mentioned earlier in the show about the termination of parental rights, and that's an issue that we address here in a lot of our family law segments. Explain that just a little bit, how that process works and the impact that it can have from an adoption perspective.
Sure. Now, a termination of parental rights has to be achieved either whether it's voluntary or involuntary and ordered by the court. There are several factors that are looked at, and it is completely up to the judge doing the adoption whether or not they find there should be a termination of parental rights. Among those things is abandonment of the adoptee, abandonment of the pregnant woman, things along those lines.
All right, so if your parental rights have been terminated and you are adopted, you become the legal child of the adoptive parents, do you not?
Correct,
okay.
You do.
And that also, because we get this question a lot, if there is, for example, a distribution of assets upon the death of an adopted parent, if there's a legal adoption, and the parental rights have been terminated from the former family, does that child inherit from that adult that adopted them? And I think the answer is yes, right?
Yes, sir, they absolutely do. In the eyes of the law, it is as if they are their natural child.
So, there are so many issues where this plays in. We talk a lot when we do our shows on, personal injury and how it relates to drunk driving and how those two criminal issues and the civil issues work together. This is really similar to that because, you see, for example, and Jennifer and I see it all the time, for example, in wrongful death cases that we have where there's an adoptive child that now inherits in the wrongful death claim where they wouldn't have had there not been a termination of parental rights and a legal adoption previously. So it plays into so many different areas of the law, and it's really why you have to have counsel lead, guide, and direct you through the process. Trying to go through this adoptive process just using the probate court is really complicated. Yeah. Getting somebody involved to help is super important.
A question we've got here, and we love getting your questions, that information there at the bottom of your screen. Once the adoption is final, who has access to the court's file?
Only the courts. Now again, if there has been some wrongdoing or a party wants to challenge an adoption, then they can hire an attorney to go into that court, get the case number, and file a motion to bring it back before the probate judge, or file, to have it overturned.
Right. Talk just for a minute, if you will, Jennifer, about and you don't have to give specific numbers, but in general terms, we talked a little bit about the cost of adoption. We have personal friends, I'm sure you do too, that have adopted children, that are overseas children. And I don't know if that's because it's popular, because it's easier, because it's less complicated than adopting a domestic child, but we have friends that have done that. It's a pretty expensive process, but you got to have counsel to work through the process, don't you?
Yes, you do.
Okay.
You have to deal with visas and the travel expenses, also with the placement agencies in the country that you're adopting from. And as I stated earlier, once you get back to the United States, you still have to complete a domestic adoption here in Alabama.
And so that makes it that makes it legal, I guess, when you do it here in Alabama?
Correct.
Okay. And so this process that people use, has that become popular? Because at one point I understood there may have been some changes where it was more difficult to get children into the United States. Certain countries had shut down the right to have adoptions. Is that accurate? Or?
That is true. Okay. And it seems to be now the trend is going away from that.
Okay.
Also, now they offer an adoption credit, not for the full amount that you have spent, but you can get a credit back on some of those international travel costs and the costs that you pay to the agencies.
Well, you know what? We need to mix this with the tax show because we did a tax show in the last week, and that's a really interesting issue.
Yeah.
There's no doubt. This is an interesting area of the law that requires counsel to be involved from start to finish. When we come back, let's talk a little bit more about the procedure that you follow.
That sounds good. Talking about procedures when it comes to adoptions, we'll pick up right there whenever we come back as we head to break. A reminder, attorneys from Hollis Wright, they're standing by live right now to speak with you about this topic or whatever topic's on your mind when it comes to a legal matter. They'd love to speak with you. Also remember, Hollis Wright available on social media. Facebook, search Hollis Wright. Twitter, it's Hollis_Wright. Stay tuned. We've got the final segment of the attorneys coming right up.
I'm attorney Tyler Vail with the law firm of Hollis Wright. Many people ask the same question: why should I hire a lawyer? While there may be some legal situations that do not require you to hire a lawyer, the clear majority of legal problems would certainly benefit from having competent counsel involved. To begin with, the law is complicated. Even experienced lawyers typically do not represent themselves in court. A solid case with clear liability can quickly unravel without the help of a trained attorney. Lawyers understand the rules of evidence and know how to properly lay a foundation to get critical evidence and testimony admitted into court. Lawyers are trained to recognize legal problems early on in a case and can help avoid pitfalls that unrepresented individuals may fall into. Lawyers can also increase the value of a case by getting experts involved to help prove additional damages that an unrepresented person may not realize they are entitled to. An experienced lawyer has probably worked on cases like yours and can give insight to negotiating a fair settlement based on recent jury verdicts and settlements that unrepresented individuals may not have access to. Another important reason to hire an attorney is because the person or business you sue will likely have legal representation themselves. Non-attorneys are generally at a disadvantage when squaring off against opposing counsel or doing business with another party that has legal counsel. The law is complicated, and an attorney who is representing your adversary may try to take advantage of you. Our law firm offers free case consultations that allow you to meet with us for free during a face-to-face meeting, where we can discuss the type of case you have, the potential value of your case, and your likelihood of success. This initial meeting can help you decide whether you need to hire a lawyer. Please remember, your call, email, or text to the attorneys is free. All of us at Hollis Wright want to help answer your questions on real issues you face. Remember, a competent lawyer will respond to every question you send in. That's our pledge and promise to you. Thanks for watching The Attorneys on WVTM 13.
Welcome back in to the attorneys. Appreciate you being with us tonight. Just under 10 minutes, 9 or 10 minutes remaining in the program tonight. So a couple of reminders that are pertinent right now. We're kind of in the home stretch of this show, so if you would like to speak with attorneys from Hollis Wright, they are standing by live right now to speak with you at the number you see there on your screen. And if you have questions you'd like to get into us, that information also at the bottom of your screen. David, Josh?
You know, I like to raise too, we sometimes mention this, if they have issues associated with this topic, great, we're here, and of course we've got Jennifer here to answer questions tonight. But if they've got other legal related issues, whatever that issue may be, they can call, text, and email no matter what the topic is. And we've got lawyers standing by to help and answer those questions as best we can.
Yeah, Sunday nights are busy for you guys.
There's no question. We answer a lot of calls, texts, emails, Facebook posts, Twitter posts. Sometimes we can't get to everything that night, but we do get to it the next morning, and so we work very hard to try and answer a lot of that stuff. So
good job.
Hopefully people will use this, because sometimes people are intimidated to contact lawyers. This is a free opportunity for them to be able to do that, so that's good. All right, so back to our main topic. I was going to talk about the procedure of adoption when we went to break, but I want to follow up on one of the firm facts when we came back in from break talked about foster care. And I want to ask about that, because I know when I was a child, my family had a foster child in our house, and I remember it fondly as a great experience for my sisters and I. Can you go from a foster care circumstance into a formal adoption, or generally is foster care just for a short period of time, and then the intent is to get that child back to the birth parents? And I figured you could kind of address that issue.
Sure. It really depends on the circumstance. A lot of foster parents do want to adopt that child and have them as a permanent part of their family. And then in other circumstances, some of them just serve as a temporary stepping stone while, say, a natural parent gets some help or some treatment that they may need so they can keep their family together. They always would like to keep the family together if possible, but foster parents are a wonderful way to either start the adoption process or to help while a natural parent gets back on their feet.
Is foster care run through DHR, or is foster care run through a different department in the state?
It is run through DHR.
Okay, so these are generally circumstances where the parental rights have not been terminated, but parents trying to go through some assistance to get help in some way, and the intent is hopefully to get that foster child back.
Correct.
But I guess you're working probably with a caseworker in a foster care circumstance where there may be the opportunity to have a permanent adoption down the road?
Yes, absolutely. If you can terminate the parental rights of that parent and the foster parents would like to have them as their natural child, then they can absolutely do that as well.
And is there, in those circumstances, I know you see this some in your practice, and we're delving pretty heavy into foster care, I apologize, but because I know that's really not our topic necessarily, but does the birth parent have involvement with the foster care setting? Like, if you're a foster parent, are you generally communicating with the birth parent, or are you communicating with a caseworker most of the time?
And again, our favorite answer as attorneys is it depends. It depends on the case. If they are just, if it is known that it's a temporary thing and DHR allows the natural parent to have contact with the child, and it's okay with the foster parents, of course, then they will allow that.
All right, so now let's talk just general procedure. When we went to break, I wanted to mention this. If somebody is interested in adoption because they just think that, you know, in their heart this is what they want to do, or maybe they're having difficulty actually having a child and they want to go through adoption, what is the first step? How does that work? Do they contact someone like you and say, look, all right, walk me through this process, lead me through this process, or what do they do? What's a good first step for somebody sitting on the couch that says, I really want to do this, but I don't know how to start?
Yes, I would most definitely start with an attorney. They can help you get to the placement agencies and help link you up with the child. They can also, you know, help you along that process and help you with your filings. There are, like we talked about earlier, there are some requirements, especially on unrelated adoptions, such as a 1-year period that the child resides in the home of the petitioner.
And so let's also talk about this. If you're going through an adoption process, does the lawyer, as a first step, are they communicating with the adoption agencies generally to try and place the parent? Like, for example, do you almost serve as a broker in some senses to kind of broker this family with an adoption agency? Is that how it works?
That's how I think that I prefer that it work.
Okay.
They can also go to their own adoption placement agency, such as Catholic Social Services, and start the process on their own before contacting an attorney. But the attorney must file all the necessary paperwork.
And here's a question we get a lot. If you want to adopt a child and you say, I would like a boy as opposed to a girl, or I would like a girl as opposed to a boy, do you have the right as an adoptive parent to have some structure into what adoptive circumstance you end up with?
To a certain extent, you do, yes.
It's interesting because I've seen over the years, there are all these crazy things that have happened in life where you can increase your likelihood with certain ways that you go through the fertility process of having a boy over a girl, and you can define that. We just kind of, Natalie and I just kind of got what we got, which is the way it works. But it's crazy how you can do that now, and you can do that from a fertility perspective, but also with these adoption agencies. I have a friend that's going through this, and they were explaining to me some of the things that you can do, and you can, request that there's certain age limits on the children, that we want a child that's under 2 years old, those types of things.
Right.
And those are specific, but they're super important to make sure that the adoptive parent is lined up with a child that they want.
Yeah, this is a fascinating topic. Yeah. We're just a couple of minutes remaining in the show, so we're about out of time, but I did want to give both of you an opportunity for a final thought. And Jennifer, if you would, you go first, please.
Yes, absolutely. The main thing that I like to remember with adoptions is when you sever that parent-child relationship, you're also severing any benefits that child could get from that natural parent. Say if the parent was a combat veteran and is entitled to GI Bill or VA benefits that they can pass on to their children, once adopted, that child will no longer be able to receive those benefits along with inheritance from that parent. So then they will only be able to receive benefits and inheritance from their adoptive parent.
That's a great point. This is one of those issues, David, where you have to have somebody lead you through the process. It may be enough, as Jennifer mentioned early on, that you contact an adoptive agency and they can lead, guide, and direct you through the process. But I would highly recommend to make sure that the parental rights are properly terminated, to make sure that the adoption process is legalized either abroad through the adoption agency, domestically here in a specific state like Alabama. Having a lawyer lead you through the process is important. A lot of these lawyers will give you an initial consultation for free, where it doesn't cost you anything, just to bounce ideas off of them of why should we hire you. Those are important things I think you need to do to lead, guide, and direct yourself through the process to make sure if you're going to go through this, you're going to do this, you do it right to make sure you're protected. Appreciate it. We've covered a lot of ground tonight. Oh, there's no question. Yeah. And it's a topic that impacts more of the viewing audience than you know. It does. Jennifer, thanks. Thank you so much. Great job. Good job. You did good. You absolutely did. Appreciate you all being with us, and appreciate you being with us as well. As we wrap things up, a reminder of how you can get in touch with the firm. Maybe now just questions popping into mind. That's how you can get in touch with the firm of Hollis Wright. Thanks so much for the time. We look for you next time right here on The Attorneys.
Thanks for watching The Attorneys, sponsored by Hollis Wright.